I'm at the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. right now, where behind me a very large crowd has gathered to honor the memory of Aaron Bushnell, the 25-year-old U.S. airman who set himself on fire yesterday outside this embassy to call for an end to Israel's genocide in Gaza. The activists set up a banner for people to write messages to Aaron, and people have been writing, thanking Aaron for his sacrifice on the sidewalk where he set himself on fire, and the burn marks from his act still remain. Before he started his protests, he explained his motives, saying, quote, "I'm about to engage in an extreme act of protest, but compared to what people have been experiencing in Palestine at the hands of their colonizers, it's not extreme at all. This is what our ruling class has decided will be normal." In the last 24 hours, Aaron has become the talk of the world, and cities around the country are holding vigils like this to honor Aaron for taking what they call the ultimate sacrifice for the people of Palestine. Since Aaron's protests, there's been a clear and concerted effort to obscure his motives. Several media outlets reported that a man had set himself on fire outside of the Israeli embassy without ever mentioning why he set himself on fire, or that it was a protest in solidarity with Gaza. NPR and the Huffington Post even tried to say that they couldn't confirm his motive, even though before his protest, Aaron Bushnell says clearly that he's about to commit an extreme act of political protest, but one that pales in comparison to the atrocities committed against the people of Gaza. Some media outlets try to depict Aaron as a religious extremist, or that he was mentally disturbed, that there's no way he could have done this with a sound mind.
He was rushed to the hospital for treatment, but later succumbed to his injuries. And if you or someone you know is in crisis, call or text 988 to reach the Suicide Aid and Crisis Lifeline.
The entire corporate media didn't all misreport this story by accident. These are the same media outlets who have spent the last 4 months trying to convince us that the genocide we're all witnessing isn't really a genocide. In fact, it seems like with every new war the US wages or finances, it becomes more and more clear that the corporate media plays a particular role in manufacturing consent for wars by sowing doubt around people's legitimate opposition and questions regarding the war. Just when anti-war sentiment starts to build, the media comes in to play the devil's advocate. A lot of the time, it uncritically repeats completely made-up claims by the Pentagon, making the public second-guess its own opposition to the war. The mainstream media peddled the Pentagon's completely false WMD narrative to justify the war in Iraq. They peddled the fake stories about sexual violence in Libya to justify the overthrow of the Libyan government. And most recently, the mainstream media has repeatedly circulated completely debunked claims that Palestinians built military command posts and hospitals, all to justify Israel's genocide in Gaza. Most of the contributors and talking heads you see on these news channels like CNN and Fox News are actually leading admirals and generals hired directly out of the Pentagon, State Department, and other factions of the national security state. In many cases, the media is literally reading Pentagon talking points provided to the media word for word, quite literally acting as the Pentagon's mouthpiece.
Jennifer, but we do know Victoria Nuland admitted that labs existed. What exactly they're for, we never got clarity on, correct?
Well, we do have clarity. I have a fact sheet. That's what I was just reading from here at the Pentagon.
The fact that the entire corporate media all tried to obscure that Aaron Bushnell was protesting Israel's genocide, or that he was only doing it because he was supposedly mentally ill, couldn't have been an accident. In fact, Aaron Bushnell wasn't even the first person to commit self-immolation in protest of Israel's genocide. But many people don't even know that a woman set herself on fire outside of the Israeli embassy in Atlanta because the mainstream media was completely silent on it. The reason the Pentagon stenographers and the corporate media deliberately mangled this story is obvious. Throughout history, self-immolation has been a catalyst for revolutionary change. Despite all the media's attempts to slander him, Aaron Bushnell has undoubtedly become a martyr, being celebrated as a hero across the world, especially by the Palestinian people. But the implication of Aaron's protests go beyond Palestine, something alluded to by a reporter in a Pentagon press briefing the day after Aaron's death.
Is he concerned that maybe this airman's actions may indicate that there's a bigger issue within the military as far as U.S. support for this ongoing operation?
For years now, the U.S. military has been facing a significant recruitment crisis. The Army hasn't hit its recruitment goals since 2014, shrinking to the smallest size since World War II, with the military's overall recruitment gap worsening every year. A recent Pew Research poll found that 53% of young adults feel that the military is contributing negatively to the direction of the country. You can find all kinds of think pieces that talk about what's really behind America's military recruitment crisis. And then they go on and on about how it's because the economy is too strong right now or this one policy that changed, but they never want to address the elephant in the room, which is that people don't want to fight these wars anymore. It's been 20 years since the US's last major ground invasion, and the legacy of the Iraq War today is one of a war based on lies and imperial plunder. It's widely understood today that not only did the politicians supporting the war knowingly lie about the justifications for going to war, but that many of them personally profited off the war themselves. Many of the soldiers, who were told that they'd be fighting to spread freedom and democracy, realized that they were actually fighting and dying for the profits of oil companies and weapons manufacturers at the expense of the lives of millions of people. In subsequent wars, the military offered America's youth the unprecedented opportunity to guide drone strikes into Yemeni weddings and Pakistani funerals. The military is increasingly relying on poor people who can't afford college to join for benefits like the GI Bill. In 2017, a survey showed that 20% of military members came from neighborhoods with a median income of $40,000. That same year, a DoD poll showed that 49% of young people said that if they were going to join the military, it would only be to be able to afford a college education. In recent TikTok trends, members of the military made videos telling people why they shouldn't join the military and how the recruiters lied to them.
If you could tell one thing to a recruiter, what would it be?
Fuck you.
Hey, if you could say one thing to a recruiter, what would it be?
Why the fuck did you lie to me?
The government subsequently banned TikTok from DoD devices. The US support for Israel's genocide was the last straw for a lot of people, including Aaron Bushnell. But it would be foolish to believe that there aren't hundreds, if not thousands of other active duty soldiers who not only saw what Aaron did, but understand his sentiment. We spoke to one of those soldiers at the vigil.
No one believes them anymore. They sit up at the podium saying over and over again that a genocide isn't happening, as if we don't all have access to our cell phones watching it unfold every single day. 30,000 people have been killed, and half of those are children. What do you mean a genocide isn't happening? It's going to become increasingly difficult for leaders to be able to convince, especially the younger generation, which was like Aaron's age, 25, that what they're doing is heroic and patriotism. Patriotism is if they stand there and tell their leaders, we are not going to fight a war for the elite that profit money off of us going there and dying. That's what patriotism is.
The last thing the Pentagon and their media stenographers want is other members of the military realizing what Aaron did, that the people we've been told are our enemies aren't actually our enemies, and it's the ones who have been telling us they're our enemies who are the ones who really threaten us. The military relies on unflinching loyalty from its soldiers to carry out its goals, which is why they go to such lengths to enforce conformity and hand out such harsh punishment to dissenters. They know that the ones they call on to drive the tanks, fire the missiles, and load the guns also have the power to refuse. They know that if members of the military started refusing to load ammo into ships for Israel or providing training and intelligence to Israel, the war would come to a screeching halt tomorrow. The warmongers expect complete obedience when they're carrying out a genocide and then act surprised when people refuse. But what did they expect? The Pentagon spokesman who answered the reporter's question about declining support for Israel's war offered his condolences to Aaron Bushnell's family and called the incident tragic. The incineration of a human being is obviously tragic. But isn't this the exact point that Aaron Bushnell was trying to make? 30,000 Palestinians have been incinerated by Israeli bombs, shot, crushed under rubble, starved to death, died excruciating, slow, agonizing deaths without medicine or anesthetics. And so far, all our government has done is offered excuses for the Israeli government that not even a child would believe. Aaron Bushnell may have gone to extreme measures to raise the Palestinian issue, but the burning anger that he felt is felt by millions. And every day that Washington continues to provide cover for this genocide is only going to fan the flames higher and higher.